I did a survey on my Instagram story about if people are concerned with what's going on between Ukraine and Russia. The survey showed 62% of the people that they're concerned and 38% said no. However, when I asked if people are more concerned with how the US responds to Russia, I got 80% of the people said they're concerned and 20% said no. Obviously, no one wants to see America goes head to head with Russia in a major conflict. The stock market also didn't react well to the fear of uncertainty on Friday when National Security Advisor warned that a Russian invasion of Ukraine could happen any day now, and that all Americans in Ukraine need to leave immediately or they won't get rescued by the US military. If the Russians do invade, then I'm expecting oil to go above $100 per barrel. Is this war in Ukraine going to crash the stock market, or is it going to trigger another global recession? No one really knows. But there are so many other contributing factors to why the stock market has been on the downturn since the beginning of 2022, like high inflation, Fed becoming hawkish, and companies reporting weak earnings. History also shows that markets don't always react to every geopolitical conflict. The market usually reacts when the crisis starts to escalate, unless the crisis itself has a direct impact on the US economy. So history showed the market reacted more during the pre-war phase, and then the stock prices went up generally when the war broke out. Regardless of the history lesson I'm about to give you, I don't want a war like this happen anywhere in the world, because the people who will truly suffer are the innocent civilians, and their country's economy will likely cripple in the long term. Now, I can't remember who said this, but this quote, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes," seems to apply every time a crisis like this happens. So let's look at our historical performances in the S&P 500 every time a major war happened that involved the US. I'm only going to show the stock market reactions in the 21st century. The first crisis in the 21st century was the attacks on 9/11. The stock market had to close on September 11, and then it didn't reopen until September 17th. The S&P 500 dropped 5% and Dow fell 7%. By the end of the week, the S&P 500 dropped 12% from its pre-9/11 level, and when the invasion of Afghanistan took place on October 7, 2001, the market was already on the way to recover to the pre-9/11 level. In that same month, the Federal Reserve announced billions of dollars in stimulus and cut interest rates from 3% to 2.5%. Unfortunately, the combination of the dot-com bust in 2000 and the 9/11 attacks put the country into a recession. The Fed's goal at the time was to have American people spend more money by lowering the interest rates. The bad news continued when the S&P 500 dropped another 20% in June and July of 2002. It finally bottoms in October of 2002 at 1,266 points, and then dropped again in March of 2003. It took a total of 18 months from September 2001 to March 2003 to finally get the S&P 500 to bottom. The airline industry especially got hit hard because people stopped flying after the attacks on 9/11. That was when Congress approved a $15 billion bailout of the airline industry following the attacks. American people got their stimulus checks in the following year, but the inflation rate remained at almost 3%. Next was the invasion of Iraq on March 20th, 2003. Leading up to the invasion, the stock market bet on the war with Iraq would end quickly. The S&P 500 and Dow went up by almost 4% over the days between March 17th and March 20th. However, oil prices gained from $31 a barrel to $66 in March 2006. The price had doubled over those 3 years. Crude oil prices went as high as $160 a barrel in June 2008. There was also a supply chain issue at the global level when the oil production didn't meet the increase in demand between 2005 and 2007. The crude oil price dropped almost immediately in the following month and then bottomed at $55 a barrel. So the stock market started to crash, and that was the beginning of the Great Recession in 2008. Moving forward to 2017, when then President Trump ordered a missile strike on Syria on April 7, which was a direct response to the chemical attack that happened 3 days earlier in the Syrian civil war. The stock market didn't react at all to the missile strike. In fact, the S&P 500 actually continued to go up for the rest of the year in 2017 and finished with 18% return. In the same year, and then all the way until June 2018, there was a period of heightened tension between North Korea and the US. North Korea launched several ballistic missiles that threatened South Korea and Japan. The stock market actually just shrugged off on the crisis and gained until September 2018 when the market correction happened. And the correction was due to the Fed raising interest rates very quickly and the fear of the US-China trade war. But the market correction had nothing to do with North Korea or Syria. On January 3rd, 2020, the US conducted an airstrike on Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, and that led to a heightened tension between the US and Iran. The stock market did not react to this airstrike, and less than a week later, Iran launched ballistic missiles hitting Al Asad Air Base. And the markets did not react at all, even though a lot of Americans thought it was going to be an all-out war between the US and Iran. Going back to the crisis in Ukraine, the market did not react well on the news because investors are concerned about how the US will respond to Russia if they invade Ukraine. Crude oil price right now is sitting at $93 a barrel. Right now, it's most likely going to increase to over $100 a barrel if Russia decides to invade Ukraine. We also have other fears in the market, like the recent CPI data showing 7.5% inflation rate year over year, and the Fed potentially raising interest rates throughout 2022. So the question remains if 2022 is going to be a short-term correction in the market or a bear market like in 2001 to 2003 and 2008. Let me know in the comment section what you think Russia will do in the coming days. Don't forget to get your free fire resources at firesidechat.com/contact. So with that said, I appreciate you watching my video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I hope to see you in the next video. Have a good one.